Shadow and then left Alabama and waved the rain.
All right, here we go. Another Square Dance Callers Talking. Tonight, I'm back in Minnesota. I've got Brad Neutz. How are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you, Charlie.
It's a pleasure to have you on here, man. We just met a couple weeks ago, actually, now. But we met at the convention. We'll talk about that. But first of all, like I do with everybody, where are you right now? Where do you live?
Sure. From Maple Lake, Minnesota. We're about an hour west of Minneapolis. If you get on Highway 55 and head west for about an hour, you'll hit that one stoplight, and that's the town where we're at. We're about 2 miles south of town.
Now, have you lived in Minnesota your whole life? Where are you from and all that?
Yes, I grew up in the St. Cloud area, town called Sauk Rapids. That's where I grew up. That's where I went to high school. Went to college at St. Cloud State, and pretty much have stayed in the immediate area of my entire life.
Wow. Okay. And you're a teacher, is that correct? No, your wife is a teacher. That's what it was. Tell me what you do.
Yeah. I'm the director of buildings and grounds for the Maple Lake School District, which means I'm in charge of everything from the cleaning to groundskeeping to make sure the football field is ready to go. We keep most of the water out of the building, off the roof. Just multiple things. Up in Minnesota too, we got snow plowing, so I don't know if you have a lot of that down your direction, but
about once every 4 years, I might see a snowplow. They don't necessarily use it.
Okay. Yep. So I pretty much make sure that the building is heated, cooled, plowed, and all ready for kids. So when things happen, I'm the guy that gets it done. So most of the time.
Outstanding. Okay. I can imagine that can be a little treacherous football season in Minnesota.
Yeah, it can be. Being a small town, the biggest part of my job is making sure the football field is green. So as long as we look like Lambeau Field, I will have a job. A lot of people love their Friday night football. Doesn't matter if the roof is leaking, but boy, if my football field's good, people are happy. So it's small town. It's what we do.
Okay. Well, when we were talking earlier, I told you that I'd been to Rosemont, Minnesota. You said about 45 minutes from you, and I did. I was about 17, and I told you I had a cousin. I went to see one of the high school football games. I don't know what I want to assume it's Rosemont High School. I don't know, but I remember now it was not snowing or anything. It was cold, and so I took in a high school football game in Minnesota for what that's worth. Well, Brad, we met a week and a half, whatever it was ago, at the Nationals.
Yeah.
In Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We went to the GSI school, and that's where I first met you, and then ran into you a couple times during the convention. So before we get into all that, you're a Square Dance caller. When did you start calling?
Sure. I first picked up the microphone about only 2 years ago. We were down in Dan Solstrom's basement. So Dan Solstrom has kind of been probably my biggest mentor. And he put a microphone in my hand, and I tell you, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, I think when you switch that mic on, it just, your brain goes dead, or at least it did at first. And then he asked me if I knew any singing calls, and I said, well, sure I do. And he kind of looks, and okay. And I said, well, I know Fisherman's Luck. And
wow,
he kind of got this look on his face. And I said, I was watching a couple of them on YouTube, and and he goes, wow, if you want to have a go, I got that song. So he fired it up, and it was a disaster. I mean, you can pretty much imagine how that went. And he just kind of laughed, and he says, okay, you ready to get to work now? I said, yeah. So then we started on the just got going on the basics, and it grew from there. So I've been behind the mic for about 2 years, and I actually just started taking dances this year. So my first dance was back in January. So and I purposely kind of held off on taking dances. Just people aren't paying me to practice. So I kind of drug my feet accepting dances. And when I was comfortable enough to take on a dance, that's when I started doing them. So I kind of purposely drug my feet just to make sure I could give a good entertaining dance. And that's kind of what we tried for.
Well, brother, I don't think you have any limits if you tried Fisherman's Luck on your first go at it.
I
It was
learned my lesson on
it
that.
was probably 6 years before I ever attempted it. It was a complete and utter disaster, and I have not touched it since. Um,
You and me
as much
both,
as I
brother.
enjoy it, and I have no desire to do it. At this point, I've got plenty of other songs I'll go to. So Dan Solstrom, great guy. Met him. I met him about 4 or 5 years ago. I forget when it was at a GSI. Had never heard of him. Being from Minnesota and everything, I didn't know who he was. And he really struck me at the GSI school. He's just a great guy. Outstanding teacher instructor for callers. I noticed immediately. And so I think after that GSI, I contacted Tony Oxendine and told him, I was like, hey, I met Dan Solstrom, great guy. You know, he went on, and ever since then, I've run into Dan at conventions and what have you. Awesome dude. So that's a heck of a mentor you have there. Now, so when did you start actually square dancing?
So we started dancing only about 6 years ago. Uh, we had some friends in our local square dance club, and they kept trying to get us to take lessons, and we almost did at one point, and then I think we ended up getting busy or didn't do it. And then finally, we were talking to them at another point, and we're like, you know what, that sounds like a fun time. Both my job and my wife's job is they're very stressful. I mean, it's you start looking at the day and what you have to do. We were just looking for something fun to do together that really didn't involve the bars, and we're kind of beyond that. So we signed up and started taking lessons, and then immediately fell in love with it, and we haven't looked back. So we've been dancing pretty hard for the last 6 years. Obviously, we had the COVID years in there. Um, but yeah, we're only even dancing at a plus level. So we've learned plus, and we can do some DVD plus. I can dance the girls part. She can dance both the guys and the girls part. I think she's better dancer at the boys part at this point, because with me calling, she kind of lost her partner, so it's kind
Yeah,
of the side effect of the caller's wife.
agreed.
But she's picked up really good on the guy's part, and I think even as a caller, obviously guys don't really want to. Not all guys want to dance with guys, um, but in our group that we dance with, we'll switch up quite a bit, and just to be able to get a feel for what the girls have to go through when you're calling, I
Sure.
think is important, because I tell you what, I hate recycle as a girl. If I'm dancing as a girl and they call recycle, um, I absolutely hate it, the way it moves, but I still call it. It works good and does what you have to do.
Yeah.
But just to understand, maybe not to overuse that call. But yeah, so we've been dancing and having a blast. When we were first new students, I mean, we were escaping and going to dances probably that we shouldn't have been to, and that's how we met Dan Solstrom. Was he was calling one of the dances, and we came in there. We were crashing square. We didn't know what we were doing, and him and Jan invited us in, and they showed us. I mean, they just, oh, come on in. And he really, for lack of a better term, he kind of dumbed up the calling just to allow us to move around the floor.
Gotcha.
And the other dancers were great. They were very welcoming. No ill will for the dancers, so they kept us going. But we were bad when we first started dancing. We were bad, and we'd go in and we were just wrecking all these squares. But people were very patient with us, and we learned. And we were even at restaurants. This is before I even knew checkers existed or even
Yeah.
Taminations. We were taking sugar packets, different colored sugar packets, and we were figuring out moves on. Oh yeah, that's how that one works. So yeah, we were just all over the dancing. We had a blast. Then yeah, the first dance we danced to Dan, he invited us to another dance that they were having, a pajama night, and we went down to, it was just this little church basement. I think they only had 2 squares going, but they were dancing plus when we got there. And we walk in, and he switched the whole program up, and they were very welcoming. And yeah, we were probably doing things that new dancers probably shouldn't have been doing, but look at us now. We're dancing all over the place and having a great time.
Well, now, so you've been dancing a few years and you've been calling a couple years now. You said he put a mic in your hand. What brought that on? Why did you think you wanted to do it?
Sure. Probably the biggest thing is we were having such a good time dancing, and it dawned on us that there's that a lot of the callers are starting to age out, for lack of a better term, and we're starting to see a lot of them retiring. And if you look in the northern half of Minnesota, there's just not a lot of clubs. Obviously we're close enough to the metro area that there's several clubs yet, but you go to the northern half of the state, they're far and few between, and a lot of them have folded. And so our dancing friends at Bill and Char Van Bergen, he was also at the GSI Collar School. We started noticing that kind of right away. Like, man, look at all these clubs falling, and not even having dances just because they don't have callers. And we both had musical backgrounds. I was actually singing was not my forte. I was more into band. I played a lot of low brass instruments all the way through college and even into adulthood. So I had a good musical background, and I can find the beat, I can carry a rhythm. And we decided one day that, yeah, we're going to go for it, and dances will come on over. And oh boy, and he sent us home with these old Newcomb record players. I mean, the things are about that big. A couple of Newcomb speakers, and he had a whole case full of records in his garage. Go pick out some records you want. And that's how we started. Eventually, we're all on digital now, but that's how we got rolling. And and I wasn't comfortable at first, so I'd wait till my wife and I would get home from school before anybody else, so that I would, with my day starts so soon, I'm done at technically 2 o'clock. So I'd come home and nobody was at home, so I'd kind of fire everything up, and I do it in the dining room because I had windows that would look at the driveway coming in, so I could watch if anybody was coming. Second somebody pulls in the driveway, I shut everything off and pack it all up, and I pretend like I'm not doing anything. And then that's kind of how I got started. And then we played, and we kept having weekly sessions. Dan would have down at his basement, and he would teach us. He would just the biggest thing he did was just he would drill the basics into us of find a way to resolve the square. And how we got started was basic with the line method, where you get somebody paired up in a line, you pass through wheel and deal, and then either if you have to zoom them to the outside, it's either a pass through or a square through three. One of the others is going to work. And he drilled that into us as our first way of resolving the squares. Actually, to some extent, I still use that way, but I'm liking the new method that they just taught us at the Collar School. But yeah, so we had weekly sessions down in his basement. He had dancers, and of course Dan's kids, they can probably dance better than I can. And
Absolutely.
and it was funny because when you first start calling, you would hesitate, right? You'd get to a formation, and then all of a sudden, you'd have to think about it for a minute. And his kids are naming out calls that would work faster than I could almost, So, and Dan's like, shh, it's let him figure it out, and we did, and that's really that was the rough start of it on how we got going. And then he would have us, work on a singing figure as well, and yeah, that's kind of how things got rolling. It was pretty rough at first, but then we started figuring it out. Like, okay, yep, if I do this formation, I got another formation coming up. But at first it was real jerky, where you just didn't have that smooth body flow, and that's been the thing that he's really been pounding into us lately, is just keep people moving, no start and stops, just keep people moving smoothly, and work on the hands. So that's kind of been kind of our focus lately. But yeah, when we first started, it was pretty rough. It was we were probably not real fun to dance to.
It always, I don't know of anybody who didn't have it rough starting out, whatever age. And I've talked to some callers that started when they were 8, 9, 10 years old, because their parents were in it for what, and that type of thing. But what you just described actually is kind of the way I wish I would have started. I started as most do, went to a club caller here in Kennesaw and said, hey, I want to do this. And so he said, go learn a couple singing calls. And for about a year, I just did singing calls, which was awesome. I'm fine with karaoke. I can get up there and parrot it back to you. But so I built up this confidence in singing calls, and then about 2 years in, he said, "Right, you got to do pattern now," and I was like, "There's no need for that. That seems like work to me." And so I fought it, and I struggled with it for years. I still do from time to time. But yeah, starting out with the pattern like you have with Dan, that's a huge head start in my opinion. So that's great. So what do you consider yourself now? Are you more of a choreography guy or a singing guy? What do you like to do?
I actually prefer the pattern myself. I've been playing with a kind of a combination of using the modules, running a little bit of sight calling, getting them back to a formation that I know, and then having a cool get out.
Okay.
That's kind of my forte on how I've been calling. Obviously, you get up on the big stage, sometimes you get nervous, and if you blow your module, then okay, you're right back to sight calling. And so most of the time when I'm up on stage, I will actually write down the corners, just some little note that, okay, these are my go-to people. Or if I'm in a club that I know the people, these people have been dancing together as long as I've known them, and they're never going to split up. That really helps a ton.
Sure.
But that's kind of how I work it is I've got a number of modules that I do, but then you don't want to sit and I guess I don't like to do that all night long either. I like to mix it up and just do a little sight, but at the same time, when all of a sudden, if you get into a setting, even like nationals, where you don't know the people and you don't know the dancers, you don't want to put your fate into dancers that you don't know. So that's pretty much full safety mode where you're working on modules and get outs where pretty much I know how I'm going to close that dance before I even go on stage. And that has really helped with the nerves over the years, is that well, over the years, yeah, but just over the time frame, that was one of the things that I worked hard to get over is the nerves, because people can, when I first went on stage, you could tell. A caller up by St. Cloud, Tom Allen, was a really good help to me as well on the journey, and he would give me a lot of mic time. So I would, every time I went to one of his dances, you better bring your stuff because he's going to ask you to get up on stage, and he was very supportive. And I remember my wife recorded the first time I went on stage, and I play it now, and it's just, you can just tell that, I mean, I was petrified. And shortly on, I kind of learned that, it's only square dance, and if I don't exactly find the corner, we can still make it fun. And I'm not saying, like a nationals, I can barely plug my microphone in, because your hand is shaking so much. But I've learned to overcome that to where you're not projecting that nervousness across to the dancers. And even when I start a dance, I might even just have a basic figure that I'll run just to, I know it's going to work. I can just get people through it. And okay, we set the stage, we found our corners for the first time, and then you can start to relax a little bit. Once you kind of work that first tip, then you can start getting into a lot more creative calling, and maybe call it more entertaining calling.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah, when on the national or state convention, whatever, when it's a place that not a lot of people know you, you go to a local dance, even if it's not your club, most of the dancers will know you if it's somewhere in your area. A little more forgiving in my mind, a little more forgiving. When I go to nationals, my opening is going to put you to the corner, and you're pretty much going to stay there for most of the pattern. And I'll move it around, but we're not going on much of a travel. There's not much of move. Yeah, I'm going to move you around in quadrants and all, but if you're looking at your corner to start, that's pretty much who you're going to be looking at, because just like you said, now I was fortunate. I had several of my dancers at nationals this year, so in the halls that I was in, they would come in for me, and so I'd work off of. And every time they came in, I was like, "Hey, you're 1 and 4. Go get in 1 and 4 somewhere," because that's the way I work right now. So yeah, do that having a plan, just you saying that you have a plan when you're going up there, I mean, that's a huge advantage right there, because you can tell if somebody doesn't have a plan when they go up and they're fishing for that term. They're looking for that corner, and it's trade and circulate and trade. You're like, come on, let's go. At least just say go home. Just make it, fix it. You know, so dude, that's awesome. You've got a great attitude in, just having a plan. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. The one thing that you did miss out, of course, you started with Dan with the records, is you said it was hard plugging your mic in, buddy, trying to put a needle down on a record. Even at a local club, I can't tell you how many times I missed the whole record or started it somewhere in the first figure. I was like, come on, you got to put the needle down. Of course, those days are gone. But yeah, I get it. I'll have that now. If I'm at the right hall, I can't get the mic cord in. I'm like, come on, get a handle on it.
Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome.
Speaking of plans though, but then when I had a couple of tips down at the youth hall, oh brother, the plan was out the window. I walked in that youth hall, and yeah, this was actually my first national convention that I've been at. And when I got the assignment for the youth hall, I'm like, oh, okay, so I figured, oh, it's going to be a lot of teenagers, and I had some cool stuff ready to roll. And I walk in, and we had all the littles, and the first tip I had in the youth hall, I was following the Sigmund brothers, and I'm like, oh my, it's a great, they're like in perfect harmony, all three of them, and I come up on stage, and but we made it fun. We changed things up a little bit, and he actually, and I talked with them afterwards, and they just said, hey, just keep moving and keep having fun, and so that's basically at that point, plan is out the window.
Sure.
And we did a lot of circle left, circle rights, and did some cool things where who brushed your teeth after supper, and a couple kids raised their hand. You're like, okay, promenade, right? And then all the rest of you the rest of you take a tic tac, you promenade, and they had a ball. We were moving them around, and at that point there was no plan. It's just kind of like, okay, this is not what I was expecting. But I tell you what, it was the most terrifying stage, but yet the most rewarding. I called 3 tips in the youth hall and had a blast in all of them. That was a lot of fun. Then we did a no hands tip. Yeah, it was fun. It was just really cool. But yeah, you can kiss that plan goodbye.
Sure. Yeah. Even the best laid plans, they're going to go out the window at a club dance or a youth hall. I walked into one a couple of years ago. A club hired me for a night, and I make my set list. And we typically in Georgia, and I know other places do it different, but we do mainstream plus for the most of the night, unless a club just says, hey, we're not very strong in plus, then I'll just go all mainstream, whatever they need. But I go in with 6 tips planned, ready for 7, and walk in, and the club president says, hey, this is our halfway dance, don't you? And I said, well, no, I didn't. And that's fine, but everything I had planned for plus and everything is shot, and all my mainstream, where exactly do you consider yourself halfway? I mean, I need to know what the list of calls that they can even do. So yeah, that whole plan's gone. And now it's just, we're going to wing it and figure out what works. So yeah, but at least going in with a plan, you got to have that.
Oh yeah. When I had my very first dance too, I had a big plan all put together. Oh, we're going to rock this place, do this and that. And the club president came up to me and, could you workshop swing through? Like, oh boy, sure. And at that point it was a complete, we're going to change things up. And a lot of the callers that I've worked with, both Tom and Dan, are very good about keep the dancers moving. If you have to adjust, they're not hiring you to come in and show off and they're not hiring you to have all these dancers on the floor staring at you. They want to move, so you got to call to their level. And if it's adjusting what you have to do, that's something I've learned early on. Is I've had very few dances that have went 100% according to plan. But you got to gauge the floor and keep people moving. If you've got a younger crowd, you can hop them up pretty good. But I had one dance, it was up in Fargo. I tell you, that was a very fun dance, awesome club. But we had a few people that couldn't get around. It was a little harder for them to get around. So you start dropping tempos, or you cut some things out of the singing call figures, so they end up where they need to be, so they can promenade and get ready for the next figure. So Yeah, there's a lot of adjusting on the fly that
Sure.
even the few dances I've done so far, I'm learning that real quick that yeah, you can have a plan, but you better be prepared to alter the plan when you get there. So
One of the things, and when you saying that, talking about Dan, I remember that it was at one of the schools that he said he was talking about calling, like say mainstream, and he said if you've got a floor that can't do everything, just kind of cut it back a little bit. And he said some callers think it's boring. He said it's only boring to you because you call it all the time. These dancers don't hear you calling it on. So what you think is boring, they don't mind or they enjoy dancing. So yeah, sometimes you have to cut it back and go to basics. But as long as they're moving, wind in the face for the term,
yeah. Yep.
is just awesome. So man, that you've got a huge upstart on everyone. Even 2 years in, and I ask everybody this: what's your favorite? Do you have a favorite call, mainstream or plus?
Oh, the one that's going to get people home, Charlie. Uh, I love I'll do actually I'll probably do them too much, but I do a lot of walk and dodges, or
Mhm.
even I'll do a lot of tag the lines itself. It's the tag the line is kind of a interesting call. Just it's setting people up. You can do so much with it. You can face them in, face them out. Um, so I've gotten into a lot of tag the lines. I got a couple cool get outs where I can get everybody where essentially this is gonna sound real rookie-ish. I apologize, but um, it's where you've got everybody in their opposite position. I'm sure there's some Fazzer name for it that I'm forgetting, and Barry Johnson is going to be very angry with me. But pretty much you have everybody on the opposites, but you're in sequence, so you're looking at your corner. You can set them up so you can tag the line. You shoot them all the way across. What I ended up doing was you star through, you can pass through, and then you tag them so they shoot all the way across, and then you face in again, and everybody's back home. So it's a real cool kind of a get out. Kind of stumbled on that accidentally playing through Taminations. I was like, oh wait a minute, that was kind of neat. Got to remember that one. And but to set it up, you kind of have to make sure everybody's. I don't know if it's the in sequence across the street. Anyway, everybody's in their opposite position, staring at the corner, and it was just kind of a cool get out I've started. And so yeah, I've used that quite a bit. I've kind of gotten into even just finishing up with a lot of stir the buckets. One of the other callers is he goes by the name of Dick Reeder. A couple of the local callers, said that he wrote a book, 301 ways to stir the bucket,
Oh
and
wow. Okay.
and he didn't, but that's always the joke, is that
Right.
he wrote this book. And so I've gotten into some of the stir the buckets, and again, it's just kind of some of the surprise endings that people aren't expecting. You can take a real basic dance and put a little flair into it, and that's what people remember. That's what I've been getting a lot of compliments on some of the get outs that I've used, and just as simple as you can finish a module, you can run them across the street, do something over there, shoot them back. And instead of just doing a left dial man, you can pass through cloverleaf, and then or you pass through outside's cloverleaf, insides do the second half of a forward and back, and they sit and stare at a minute, and then it's back up. Oh, you're home, and people get a good reaction on it. So it's just kind of a fun little thing.
No, that's good.
It really doesn't do anything, but it's just a little extra
Sure.
flair that maybe is unexpected, and that's what keeps it fresh for people, is just doing some of the unexpected things. And Dan's a master of it. That guy's probably forgotten more than I'll ever know in my life. That man, the stuff that guy can see and do is just amazing. And which also sometimes is a little intimidating, because he'll be in the back corner kind of watching you, and he'll be like, so but that's what I try to do, is just do things that you can even just the basic traffic pattern, move people around. One of the things we just started playing with is just kind of picking a person in a square and then moving them into all the quadrants all around the square, and then get them back home, just to keep people moving around, and hopefully not dancing with the same person all night. But we all run into that, where all of a sudden it's, oh, I got these modules going, and all of a sudden you start realizing, man, they're kind of dancing with the same people. So You can shoot them across the street, or you can invert and rotate a little bit with some of those modules. Um, that's what I've been playing with. Sometimes I dig myself in a hole, but hey, it's
Sure. Well, you have to. If you're not digging yourself in a hole, not making mistakes, you're never going to get better at it. The fact that you're working on certain things is impressive. It's great. Because you have to go through that. Now, as far as non-dancing stuff, do you uh, do choreography every day, every week? What do you do for like Taminations or checkers?
Oh, sure. I'm probably bigger on Taminations than checkers. I know I've had some of my mentors are like, get on those checkers. You learn a lot more with the checkers than you do with the Taminations, and so I do both. Oftentimes I get into some weird arrangements where Taminations won't do it, where then I'll pull the checkers out and I'll take over from where Taminations have left off. But I'm a big, I really do like the Taminations, just because when you're playing with it, it also records what you're doing so you can play it back. Like if you do stumble on something that's really cool, like, oh wow, I'm not that creative, I really am not, but like this, once in a while the blind squirrel gets an acorn, right? So
Sure, sure.
if you play with it enough, you might come up with something cool. Um, and so that's why I do like the Taminations, is you can go back and check on it. Or I've even reversed engineered some things where if like, hey, I want to do this kind of cool get out, like where it's the worst body flow in the world, but it's okay. Maybe you come off of, like, you have the centers come off of a flutter wheel, and you sweep a quarter, sweep another quarter, or sweep the one you're sweeping with, and you're home. I would reverse engineer things like that with Taminations, where like, okay, this is kind of the get out I'm trying for. Now how can I set myself up to get there? So I'll actually play with things in the opposite way, like, okay, I want to end it this way, and how can I make it happen? And so I've played with stuff that way as well, but that's where Taminations is fun.
No, that's a good route. It really is, doing it that way. Because, like I said, I did a lot of singing calls to start, and was never really talked to about get outs until I started going to caller schools and getting a little further along. It was all either pass through Alaman left or square through three Alaman left. And I was impressed when I got there, but now, yeah, I mean, you got to do more. Just like you said, you want it to be different for the dancers, because anybody at most levels of calling can give you a square through three to an Alaman left.
Yep.
So you got to have a handful, and it doesn't have to be every single Alaman left comes from something. Just, hey, what is that? But at least once a tip, couple times a night, 3 times, 4 times a dance. That's awesome, man. Now, have you, outside of going to Milwaukee, have you called anywhere else, any other states or anything that stand out to you?
Yeah. I went this spring, I went down to the Iowa State Convention. So kind of with Tom Manning and his crew were all down there. Gary Smith and Doug McCourt and all those guys, the Spratsies, were down there. I landed 8 tips down there, which I actually was surprised. I didn't think I'd quite get that many when I signed up with them, but they gave them to me, and it was actually a really good convention. It went well. People were moving. They were having a great time, and like I said, I think I threw some things at them that they hadn't seen. I ended up booking. I had a lot of clubs wanting to book me down there, but I'm like, you're 6 hours from my house. And like, well, would you come for $100? And you don't want to tell them no, right? You're like the guest there. And I said, well, email me and we'll figure something out. Well, then something clicked. I said, well, tell you what. I said, if you get with a couple other clubs, and if you can do like a Friday night, a Saturday, maybe a Sunday,
Okay.
get a couple gigs together, yeah, we'll look at it. And within a half hour, she comes back to me with 2 dates. Yeah, this will work for all these clubs. And I was just in shock that they were like, they wanted me that bad. I'm like, wow, okay. And I said, well, tell you what, email me the dates. We'll check the calendar when we get home. And we did. So we actually did end up booking a little road tour going back down to Iowa
Fantastic.
to do some of those clubs. So yeah, and we're actually staying at somebody's house, and that's kind of the way the old school callers did it. And
Sure.
we'll try anything once, I guess. So yeah, we're kind of excited about that. That's going to be next summer. But no, we did the Iowa State Convention. We did obviously the Minnesota State Convention. actually, I had my second year at the Minnesota convention. I had the previous Minnesota convention, I was really new, but they had somebody that didn't show up. So, Dan, he's walking around. Hey, Brad, you bring your stuff? And yeah, he goes, you're on. And I'm like, well, when? He go, we got about 15 minutes. And like, my stuff is back up in the hotel room. So I go running upstairs. I'm quick changing shirts, trying to make myself presentable. And I come running down. And I mean, you didn't even have time to get nervous. You come running in. And it's like, hey, you're on in about 2 minutes. Like, I'm just hoping my computer fires up because I got an older computer. And I mean, you're just waiting for something to go wrong. But got up and put on a great tip, and it went well. And so yeah, that was kind of some of my first work with conventions. I did I've done well. I've called up at the Fargo Club, which is right across the Minnesota border. It's still, for us, it's about a 3-hour drive. I did go to last year. Jerry Junk had a collar school down in Nebraska,
Nice. Okay.
so we had a dance down there. Um, so yeah, I'm kind of working a couple of the local states. We have a couple clubs that are tied with the Minnesota Federation, but they actually dance in Wisconsin. So there was a couple clubs in Wisconsin that I've called for, up in Balsam Lake, kind of a fun club up there. So yeah, I've gotten around. I mean, we've already started to put some miles on the car, and that's what I'm hearing is square dance callers put a lot of miles on the car.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my wife is a genius at working on things remotely, so she's always got a backpack full of work. So while we're cruising down the interstate, she's working on something, whether it's a newsletter or something else. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
we stay busy.
It's a great story. Yeah. You do put a lot of miles on, and it's just that, depending on the clubs now, I hear about them in the past, but 150 is really good. But yeah, I'll get people in Florida ask me to come down. In Florida, Orlando, Tampa, that's an 8-hour run from where I'm at in Georgia. But you don't want to tell them no. And I'm just like, can we get can we get two dances put together, and then I'll come down and stay on the beach? That's not a problem. I got no issue. I was probably going to go anyway. If you want to throw a dance in there, sure. Twist my arm, I'll be there. But yeah, there's a lot of staying with other people and things like that. If you're good with that, that's awesome. That's the best way to do it. It really is. But yeah, you're going to put miles on a car. I drove to Wisconsin. That's the furthest I've driven by myself. Because that was all total about 12 and a half hours, I guess.
Yeah.
And my wife flew up Thursday, and then so Sunday we left out of there and we drove. I didn't drive it straight. I drove to Indianapolis first night, and then drove into Milwaukee the next. And coming back, we drove down and spent the night in Louisville, Kentucky, the home of bourbon. That was a bad plan for a little while, but then we drove in there. We drove in the following day. Well, bad plan, but it's a good plan for me. But so you have your own club now, is that correct?
Yes. So we just started a brand new club. So Bill Van Bergen, he's kind of we started dancing at the same time. We started calling at the same time.
Okay.
We're pretty much dancing buddies. But the four of us, between him and my wife, or him and his wife, and myself and my wife, we've been at it from day one. We've pretty much had the same journey. And we were at a position in our old club that it was time, especially with us being two callers. Um, we've kind of been doing some teaching anyway. So with the farm, I have a farm shop. It's a big heated building that we keep the tractors in for fixing, which unfortunately we have to fix more than I care to admit. But it's a big heated building. And so we have probably the best resource that I've had since I started calling is I have weekly dancers that come out and they let me play. And so Bill and I have been playing with them for a long time. So they come out weekly. It is so invaluable. They tell me, and they're not afraid to tell me what doesn't work. So if it's bad body flow, I mean, they'll stop right there. Oh, that, and it's very good to get that feedback right up front, so you're not keep doing the same thing over and over again. But having that weekly group of dancers has helped our calling. Well, then that kind of progressed into, hey, we'd love to come out to the shed too. And so we'd actually have some new students that would come out and like, hey, could you workshop this for us a little bit? And well, yeah, no problem. So we'd stop and then we'd workshop whatever they had. Of course, maybe it's a Dixie style or something, and we go through and workshop it. Well, then they would go back to lessons, and people are like, wow, where'd you learn that? Oh, well, they taught us. Well, next thing you know, we got 3 squares out in our shed,
Nice.
and it kind of went from collar practice into workshopping, which is a very good skill anyway. So we just kind of went with it. We're just, yeah. So hey, come on out. Um, so it kind of went into this direction of, we're gonna, like, if I got a brand new singing call, I'm like, yeah, let's throw this out there. Like, hey, this is brand new, guys. Ooh, that didn't work so well. Um, no big deal. We'll tweak it. We'd walk through it. Or then, so we kind of do this whole mad, it's collar practice. It's, we're going to workshop on you. If there's anything you want us to do, we're going to look at. Um, so the 4 of us have kind of been putting that on for a while now,
Jesus.
and it's was just, yeah, we had a blast with it. And then we actually even started getting people bringing snacks out. I mean, next thing you know, it's almost like a full-fledged dance going off out in our shed. And um, so that really kind of propelled us into, like, we've been doing a lot of teaching already. And with the gals working, so they both work, my wife's a teacher, and Bill's wife also works at the Buffalo High School, or the middle school. They had access to the building at a very reduced cost. So we have a really gorgeous room. If you want to look on we have a Facebook page for the new club. It's B&B Squares. We've got pictures of our inaugural dance that we did, and it's a domed building. This part of the building is domed. It's actually the cafeteria.
Okay.
But the acoustics in there are just amazing. You can be in the back of the room, and it sounds almost, with that dome in there, it sounds almost as good as being right up in the front. The weak point of the room is actually dead center, because they have some acoustic tiles up above in the dome. But just a cool building. We get it for probably a fraction cost that most of the clubs are paying, because the gals have the keys, so we don't have to hire custodians. We come in and do all our own setup and all our own cleanup. And when we had our inaugural dance, we had over 12 squares show up. And
Jeez,
I mean,
nice.
it was a room full. We had so much energy in the room. We were just pounding the tunes. And then Bill and I, we would call together a lot. So we started off, we're actually dabbling with some plus. So we actually started off with some plus. And then we kind of switched into just alternating tips a little bit, and then we finished with a couple of duets, and we had that place just pounding. I mean, it was such a fun time. And yeah, that was our first dance. So we have our initial kickoff is going to be this fall in September, and we got actually a pretty big dance planned. We're even planning an after party, and we're trying to bring in some other callers as well, and we're bringing in black lights for the after party. So we're gonna have a pretty big production out there, and it was so much fun. But yeah, check it out on the Facebook page. There's
Absolutely.
a
B&B
lot of
Squares.
pictures, and a lot of pictures, and a lot of a lot of us singing in there too. But yeah, so that's kind of how we got things going. And when we first chartered for it, we had like 20 some members to just initially start up, and then we're hoping to get in a bunch of new students. The gals, both Michelle and Shar, are amazing on the Facebook, and they use Canva through the school. It's kind of um, like a graphics program. I mean, they can come up with some just really cool flyers, and they've just really come up with some really neat things. And they put that on Facebook, and they kind of canvass the local communities. And even in our old club, those gals were bringing in 40 to 50 new students for lessons.
Nice.
We didn't retain them all, but that's part of our goal, is to maybe work on more retention, just to keep the lessons fun. I think in our old club, that's a little bit of what happened, was the lessons weren't going fun. We weren't really in charge of them, but with the new club. I think that's the direction we want to take, is let's keep these lessons fun. If people are not having fun, they're not going to come back. So
Yeah.
that was kind of the change of direction that we're hoping for. And I mean, you can have fun at lessons. We proved it in the shed all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we've actually had to stop dancing because people are laughing so hard they could not hear the calls. I mean, that's a good dance in my
No, it
opinion.
is. It is.
If you have to stop the dance because people are on the floor rolling so much from laughing, that's a great dance. I mean, it's about entertaining. You know, it's like, it's not about getting the steps right. It's about entertainment, and that's what we're trying to do.
Hang on, I gotta do this for my wife.
That's right.
And I'm recording that.
No pressure.
I know. Good Lord. You get something to wrap on that. Oh, that's not gonna hit the edit floor. I couldn't open it. Just bought that today, actually. It's some kind of jelly, I guess. And it came from a farm in Savannah. We went down to see her mother over the weekend, and we were down. There's a little farm where we buy all of our hamburger meat and stuff like that, because they have their own cattle. And of course, we get jellies that I can't open, evidently. Did you open it? Yeah. Well, my wife opened it, so there's. I couldn't open it. My wife did, so there's. Fantastic. Back to you. I wanted to ask you this earlier when you caught my attention in the mainstream hall. You were doing "She Don't Know She's Beautiful," a singing call, and I was like, hey, and then I remembered you. I looked up. I was like, who is that singing? And I looked up and I saw you, and I was like, that's a guy from the GSI school. And so we met after that. What are some of your favorite singing calls now that you've been doing it a while?
Oh, sure. You know, one that I really like to do is it's actually a Prince song. It's Raspberry Beret.
Nice. Okay.
Ted Lizotte, I think, was the original one that put it out.
Yes. TBT.
Absolutely love that song. I've done it a ton, and I've had really good people love it. It's just a little bit of a different song. And it starts off, you know, with the whole first part of the song is the original. It's almost, I think it's the original version of the song, because he starts off with a 1-2 and you go side space grand square, and then you got the intro to the music, and then eventually it comes back in where you circle left, and then you start taking off with the song. So that's a real cool one. Another maybe more of a different song that I do that a lot is it's called "One Piece at a Time" by Johnny Cash. And I tell you what,
no, that was a square dance song. Love the song. Okay, go ahead.
You need oxygen when you're done with that one. There's just a lot of words into it, and I've picked up on that one pretty good. People like it. That's kind of how I got into. I'm kind of known as the guy with the black hat, and started kind of wearing a lot of black shirts. Well, then I got into some of the Johnny Cash song. Well, then of course people pick up on that right away. You're the Johnny Cash guy. But you know, there's so many good tunes. I mean, when you get on that Music for Callers site and you look at just everything that's out there, I'll be honest, I've got a lot of things sitting on my computer that I don't even know if I could quite pull off. But it's such a cool song that I've bought them. I guess a couple, you know, I do a lot of kind of more 90s country is probably my big wheelhouse.
Okay.
You know, even the old David Dudley song, that's been a pretty popular one. People have liked it. 6 Days on the Road.
6 days. Yep, good song.
I've got I sing with a little bit of a lower voice, so I can get those bottom notes pretty dang good, and it kind of makes it fun. So that's kind of a fun one that I've done. I just everything. We 5 o'clock somewhere is a good one that Bill
Great song, Jimmy Buffett.
We started doing a lot of duets with that one. Let's see. Dan just recorded, I think it was Solid Gold with Tom Manning's crew. Should Have Been a Cowboy. He actually invited me to the studio while they were recording that song, and what experience that was. So of course I bought that song, and that song rolls pretty good. That's a good Toby Keith one. Somehow I keep I have a lot of drinking songs in my library, and I kind of try not to do too many in one night, but they just make such good songs. A lot of them,
Sure.
start getting into Margaritaville and Beer for Your Horses. That's a pretty good song that's out there. So yeah, I kind of watch my crowd too. I don't want to do too many of those, but I don't know. Probably just probably the 90s country is probably my biggest wheelhouse. Um, but yeah.
Very good. Now, one of my favorite songs that I do a lot, I've kind of cut it out because I did it so much. All my rowdy friends are coming over tonight. And of course, it's got beer references in it, drinking references, but still love it. Another one Tom Manning did, gosh, this is a long time ago, is People Are Crazy.
Oh, yep.
God is good, God is great, and beer is good. Beer is whatever. I forgot the word now. But yeah, a lot of the beer drinking songs make really good square dance songs, but you can't do a whole night of it.
Yeah,
Maybe somebody will come up with that theme and I can do it in one night, but who knows? I try and stay on the theme. Well, before we get wrapped up, man, you're really in the beginning of the calling, and it sounds like it's going fantastic for you. You've got your club and everything going now, and I will say, when you were talking about that, it took me years. I finally got a club 2 years ago now, and that is a giant step in your calling when you can call every week, every other week, and start teaching. You've already done that. That's huge when it comes to just your calling. I was told, and I've realized now, if you teach a class, you will learn more from that class than the students ever will. As far as your calling, how to get people into positions and out of positions quickly, just when you're teaching. And so that's huge. And you've already got your club, so that's outstanding. What are you looking to do? Do you just want to keep building clubs, or what do you, any place? Let me give you a different one. If you could call anywhere right now, where would it be?
Oh,
What about that?
honestly, I'm not there yet. Yeah, I've got to grow. But just watching, being at the national convention and watching the guys get up with the Ghost Riders.
Oh yeah.
I tell you what, I'm waiting for the day that I can get up and sing with a group like that. I think you had your first tip with them this year, correct? Or
No, that was I've been with the Ghost Riders 3 times now.
okay.
And I was lucky enough when they came to Atlanta a few years back for the Nationals. Was the first time that I got to go up with them. Did Simple Man, Leonard Skinner song that Scott Bennett put out. Love the song, and I feel like I do it pretty well. And it was just awesome doing it with them. It's a little frightening, and you've probably noticed it. The song, that they're fantastic, the band, but it's not going to sound the same as the recording, like the open and all that. And so that song has a grand square to open, and you've got to hit it right. And if you don't, you're going to be off. Luckily, this year, Paint Me a Birmingham that I did with them, one of my other favorite songs, it's got a open with a circle left. So you can be a little off because, you can just circle left a little bit less or a little bit more.
Yep.
Throw in a now and everybody will spin around and you get caught back up on time. But yeah, your time will come with the band. The Ghost Riders are phenomenal. You go in and practice with them. Those guys work with all the callers. It's amazing what they're able to do. But yeah, and you get a list of all the songs that they do, and you pick out which one you want. And if nobody else has got it, that's why I got lucky. I'd never heard anybody do Paint Me a Birmingham, and it's one of my favorite Tracy Lawrence songs. So I knocked that out, and I felt really good about it. So a lot of fun there. But yeah, I would imagine probably Shreveport, you might have your shot, brother, the way you're going. So you're doing well.
I think if I do ever get that shot, I'm gonna probably need my wife to plug in the microphone, because I don't think I'd be able to do it by myself, or be like, whoever's emceeing here, plug me in, because
it's awesome. I'll tell you, and not to, because I've mentioned this once before. A couple years back, I did Brandy from Looking Glass, one of my other just favorite songs. It's one of my regular songs that I do at most of my dances. That it's not my regular dancers. And you know the original song with Looking Glass, the band comes in for Brandy or Fine Girl as a backup. I'd never had that at my dances, obviously, because I'm doing it off my laptop.
Yeah.
And I went in there. We practiced that morning, and I went through my figures, and then I came back that night, and so we crank up Brandy. And when I hit that first part, and they came in by, it scared me to death. I was like, "What is going on?" And they're singing the backup to it. It was phenomenal to hear. I mean, it was such a good time. But no, I'm going to be there. I'll be there for your first one with them. I promise you that, brother. I don't know if it's Shreveport, if it's Shreveport, if it's Colorado, whatever. But that'll happen.
Oh, it'll come in time.
Absolutely. So you're set for Shreveport. Do you have any other big stuff coming up this year? Any other conventions or anything you got planned?
No, well, we have the Wisconsin conventions coming up. That one I still have to double check the dates, make sure I can work. Unfortunately, we have a big construction project at the school going on this summer, and we got to make sure that school can open in time. So I don't know how that's going to play out. That's going to be a little later in August. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we're just planning kind of the same conventions. Unfortunately, my wife and I, we both work full time yet. Unfortunately, that darn work kind of gets in the way. And
sure. No, it does. It does.
I know with her and myself, we're probably both putting in 60-hour weeks. I mean, it just goes with the job. But obviously, we have all of our state conventions. We have so our local. It gets pretty good draw. Our local, we have a callers organization called Swing Masters. So it's just our local callers association. We put on a summer festival that's going to be happening soon. There's a festival in St. Cloud, which is where Tom Allen has his club. That they get a pretty good draw over there. Just some local festivals for now. We are doing some demos out. So with the new club, we're going to be going out and doing some demos, trying to drum up some new students. You hit some county fairs and some things, and it's you just never know what you're going to get out of a demo. But if you can make it exciting, and that's what we try to do, is get some really upbeat music pounding away, and you never know, turn some heads, or at least get people thinking about it. Otherwise, no, nothing real huge. We last year we were down at the Tennessee convention. I didn't call, but we were down there. Boy, what a convention they put on down there.
I was gonna tell you, if you're gonna hit some state conventions, Tennessee is definitely one of them.
We've been there. That was just phenomenal. So I think it's on the plans for next year, and then might even look at if they have an opportunity to call. But being the new caller, you're kind of usually in the room down the hall and around the corner. That's kind of what the new callers, but it's part of paying your dues. And even with, like I said, even at the nationals, with the youth hall, same thing. I loved it, had a great time. I'd do it again. Even the SSD hall maybe wasn't the most attended hall of the convention, because you're kind of competing with the Ghost Riders, but you know what, you're still on stage, you're at nationals, and you just do your thing and have fun, and the people that are dancing, you just make sure they have a good time. So that's part of putting in your dues.
It is. I had a couple spots in the SSD, and not as many squares, but it's time you can work on things, because it is SSD, so it's there's less calls, so you can go in there and work on it. And I had fun in the SSD hall. I mean, granted, I like the plus. The plus always had 6, 7, 8 squares in there, so that was a good time. And a little bit better dancers, stronger dancers. Let's say it that way, stronger. I didn't have any mainstream spots, and I was like, "Come on!" I wanted to be in the vendor hall. I love calling in the vendor hall.
Yeah.
But maybe next year in Shreveport. That's a good time. Yeah. Well, so you got Tennessee out of the way. There's a lot of other states that just to get your name out there, man. Especially, of course, you're doing the ones right around you, and that's a good idea. I think next year I'm going to try Illinois. Their state convention. Illinois. There's an S on the end of it.
Yeah, Illinois.
So we got that. and I just started asking people this, and this may not even be on some of the list, but um, if you could make any song into a square dance song, what would it be?
Oh, boy, there's so many good tunes out there. One of them would be, I really love the song by REM, The Shiny Happy People.
I was thinking about this weekend. Go ahead, Johnny. Happy.
Yep, yeah, I think that would make a heck of a song. You really get that pounding away. Um, I'm obviously I grew up in kind of the late 80s, early 90s. You know, I know Scott has a number of him on Crest recordings and over there, and I own a lot of them already. It was nice with the college school. He put a few of those on sale, so we added to the collection. Um, being with the Prince theme as well too. I'd love to see Little Red Corvette come out. I would
Oh gosh,
totally
yeah.
do Little Red Corvette with that. Um, you know, anything by Bon Jovi can convert. Maybe even the you get into the 80s with the hair bands, they had such great even the ballads that would come out. To see people do more of those on the recordings to bring some of those up. I mean, those are some of the, in my opinion, some of the greatest ballads ever written. I wouldn't mind turning up the energy to get maybe a few more of the some of the hair bands out there. Pick the tune; it's all pretty good.
Yeah.
I grew up with
Yeah,
that.
TBT Throwback Tunes has a lot of the
Yep.
80s ish. Really nice.
I think I own almost all of his too. He was on sale for the college school, so
Yeah, Ted's a good dude.
Ted gave me a discount, so
I'll
appreciate
tell you, and here's another one. When you brought up REM, one of my favorite. I use it for patter. There's a singing version also, and I don't think I can get my voice there. But on SD Bob, Square Dance Bob, SD Bob recordings, is "Losing My Religion," an REM song.
I've heard that one. Yep.
I use the patter. It's so close to the same music. It's amazing. Check that out. Love "Losing My Religion." I do it as patter all the time. Thought about doing the singing version that he has on there too, but I'm not gonna go that route. But being from Georgia, I feel like I got to do an REM song every now and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
then. About that. Brad, it's been my pleasure, brother. We're working on a little over an hour, and man, I'm so happy that I met you at Nationals and we had that time to meet and to get to do this. So we've talked about your plans coming up early on, since you're 2 years in, but you've got more than that because you've been dancing longer than that. So I would love to do this again with you and find out where your club is in about a year and see where you are. And hopefully we'll run into each other somewhere. Are you in, I'm certainly not pushing anything, but are you in Color Lab or American? What's your anything?
Yeah, yep. I'm a member of Color Lab.
Okay. Well, and then I will say this: you need to go to a Color Lab convention.
I know the 50th is coming up.
The 50th is in South Carolina. That is a long way from you. I know that. Just 3 hours for me, short little 3 hour drive. But the Color Lab conventions, outstanding. All the callers that you see at Nationals for the most part are there. And what sold my wife and I, and when we started going several years ago, is they have dances every night. And it's all these upper level callers, if you want to use that term, that are really good. And of course, all the dancers are either callers and their partners and their callers. So the dancing is a really good level, and the callers, they know who they're calling to, so they're trying to show off what they can do. The dances are fantastic at night. It's a different level. It's awesome, and just the Color Lab sessions and all stuff like that. So if you have the opportunity, you should definitely. If it's not this one coming up in South Carolina, the 50th, make it the next one. But you need to go to a Color Lab.
Well, it's on the radar. We're looking at schedules, so
it's really it's a great time, and I couldn't be happier being a part of Color Lab. And so there's that. There's my little pitch for Color Lab. You need to go.
A card carrying member, absolutely.
All right, Brad. Hey, man, it has been my pleasure. I want to do this again. Hope to see you down the road, whether it be at a national, Color Lab, or whatever it is. and I look forward to hearing what you're doing with it.
Well, it was a pleasure meeting you, and really appreciate the invitation to come on with you. I'm like, wow, I'm just like looking at all the people that you interview, and wow, he picked me to come talk.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. The way you handled yourself and your singing call and everything in GSI school, I thought, how do I not ask this guy on there? So,
I really appreciate it, Charity.
you're doing great, Brad. I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate
You have a good night.
Okay, yep, you too. Bye.
The sights face Grand Square. She wore a raspberry beret, the kind